Welcome, everyone. Once again, we are most delighted to be talking to you, David, and yeah, to see what's up. The last presentations already, as the ones before that were amazing yet again. So I'm pretty sure everyone is curious for the next thing, as always, and for the next, layer of understanding.
Yeah. Hi, Raphael. Yes. Um, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Yes. Yeah, it was God's birthday. I don't know which God people um, talk about, but God's birthday on December the 25th. So, God says hello to everybody. I don't mean that God in heaven. I mean God the Pope. Yes. So that's the first thing. Yes. I would like to tell everybody a Happy New Year from God Himself, um, the Honorable Pope. Yes. Okay.
Most honorable, I'm sure, yes.
Yes. Oh, for you, it's not God. For you, it's Dad. Yes. Papa, it's Daddy. Yes. So don't make the mistake. Anyway, today, let's go through something controversial, which nobody talks about. English is a major global language today. Yes. Um, it's used in education, it's spread worldwide. Everyone thinks this language is old and it's many centuries old. Really? Or are they talking Polishtein? Yes?
No, wait, are you
Okay,
telling me there's some issues with Middle Old English and Early Old
it
English and
didn't
all of these
exist. It's
things?
all a fake
Ah,
history. It's
David,
all a
come
lie.
on.
English is a new language. They
So
invented it
many
around
professorships and
200.
study groups and everything will be in parallel. Please go on, David.
Okay, first they're going to tell us that the vowel shifts and vowel movements in English happened in the 17th, 18th century. So by the 18th century, it had settled down. So that means English wasn't even a standard language before the 18th century. Then what they don't tell you is this. Many people are going to say, hey, I got all these Bibles that are old. Yes, it was not until after the mid 18th century, or more like in the 19th century, that people didn't start using the letter J throughout Europe. So not just English, in French, in Dutch, in German, yes, in all these languages, in Swiss, in Spanish, in Italian, all these languages, we have a problem with the manuscripts that they're saying are older than the 18th, 19th century. Yes, that they mysteriously have the letter J in the manuscripts. Yes, when the letter J didn't even exist. You
Oh, I
see?
see. Okay. I see. Yeah.
Yes. And what do you call it? Yes. And also the letter U was starting to be used. So then they're telling us Latin was ancient. So the entire alphabets and everything weren't even established. So that shows there's something wrong with all these books, manuscripts, and printing dates that they're telling us from the 15th, 16th century and everything. So they've been playing around like with the letter A, I, E, A, E, and all these things. Yes. So there is something seriously wrong. Let's investigate. Yes, we're not just going to listen to anything. So they're saying, what do you call it? Yes, what do you call it? That England, they're saying, was what do you call it? French speakers. They can't even make their minds up. That they will say, what do you call it? The French speakers, and it started being modified from France after the 16th century. So what about the English before then? Yes, and then they say William the Conqueror invaded England. What do you call it? Yes, in the 1,000 years ago. So, and they came from France, so they should be speaking French. So now look at this. Look at this garbage here. Yes, French, French, French was used by lawyers and the educated class. It was the written language until the 17th century. In the 18th century and after this, only after this they started using English, according to their
Yes.
history.
Yes.
So if they were using French and they're studying French in schools, who the hell's going to be reading and writing English?
Yes. Good point.
Wait a minute. They're using French in London. Yes, and throughout England, and all the upper class and the elite, and they're telling us the monks, the lawyers, and lawyers means monks. They were the Pope's lawyers. They were Daddy's lawyers. The Pope, by the way, in case some people have forgotten who the Pope is, yes, he's called Papa. Yes, and I have to remind everybody. You know what I mean? The thing is, everybody seems to
Seems like
have
he's your
forgotten.
favorite guy on the whole planet, right?
He's not our guy to us. He's our dad. He's Daddy. Yes. So the thing is, what do you call it? Yes, he's Daddy himself. Yes. And the thing is, be careful what you say about him. Yes. He's family. You understand, Papa? So now, the thing is, they're telling us French is being used, and then in the 18th century, after that, only for 200 years, they're reading and writing in English. So now the thing is, what do you call it? The lawyers in them days were Daddy's lawyers. They represented Daddy. You understand? That if you broke the church laws and regulations, you see?
Right.
They weren't them type of lawyers. They were like what do you call it? Yes, burn him to death.
And I'm
Yes.
just thinking it's so funny, even today, the official legal term for someone who is accused, he will get a persecutor, someone who's persecuting him, you know? So,
Yeah, prosecutor. Yeah, he's being persecuted. Yeah, yeah. The people won't understand these things. Let's not go deep. Yes. Well, anyway, so they're using French. So where is the English language? Where does all these famous English writers fall into it then? It doesn't make sense. Yeah, everywhere you go, what do you call it? In universities, everyone knows this. Everyone studies this, but most people don't use their brain. Yes. So what do you call it? Law French, and now they're going to say it's Anglo French. It was French. It doesn't matter if you say Anglo American or Anglo Australian. It's English. They're using French. Yeah. It's in proceedings, pleadings, law books, in writing books, medieval times all the way through to the 17th century. This is what they're telling us. Yes. So now the upper class are using français. Yes. So where is the English language?
I mean, just like you said, it probably wasn't
So
existing in
now
the
they're
way
telling
they're
us
telling us, yeah.
now they're telling us that there was a guy called Jimmy, yeah, Jimbo, James Bond or James, yeah, and they're telling us the King James Bible was written in English and it's one of the most famous Bibles, and they're telling us it's completed and it was published in what do you call it, in 1611 in English. Yes, how can this be in 1611? Yes, when nobody, when the people who read and write are reading and writing in French, according to the history. How can this be possible? 200 years earlier. Does that make sense to you?
No.
And how could they have translated this Bible into English 400 years ago when we didn't have the first proper modern standardized English dictionary until 200 years ago?
Well, of course, I guess now they would say, well, they just wrote it, they translated it into Middle
Oh,
English
they
or
were so
whatever,
brainy.
you
They
know?
knew how to translate things because they were brainy, and they knew how to spell and write the words in English, even though we didn't have standardized dictionaries until 200 years ago.
Yeah, it would be a
Oh,
flaky
they're not
excuse, of
lying
course,
here,
but
Raphael.
hmm.
They're not telling lies here. Yes. And so the thing is, you can check this. It's well known in case somebody thinks I'm making it up. There's many websites, other things. English was only standardized. And they say there were changes in the English language up until from the 15th to the 17th century. Change in pronunciation, vocabulary. They didn't even know the meaning of words because it was always changing. We didn't have a codified standard English language dictionary or grammar or anything until the 18th century, according to official history.
Yes.
200 odd years ago. Can you smell the bullshit? A Bullstein? Oh,
Yeah, I
yes.
mean, yeah, I want to say with lots of imagination, of course, one could imagine that French and English existed concurrently. They were translating it into an old
Oh,
version
they
of
want you to
English, you
imagine
know.
things.
But yeah, but of
That's what
course,
they
it would
want you
be,
to imagine.
exactly, it would be definitely, let's say,
Not
more.
them. I mean, that's what Daddy wants you to imagine.
Yes, and
That
of course,
what do you call it?
as so often with these things, many things in the world we observe, everyone has always to observe their own thinking, and when so many extra assumptions and logical steps have to be made, it is quite likely that there is something hidden within it, or there is some type of deception
Yeah.
going on, let's say, when you need to calculate
Okay.
in, factor in
Yeah.
so many things. But please go on, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. So now in the 18th century, they were doing experiments to reduce the language so that it fits in rules and to establish a correct usage so that we know what the words are. People didn't even know what English was until these people wrote it down in a few dictionaries and books that most people didn't have a copy of, and people didn't even know this language. You see? Yes. So the thing is, and then people will tell you this. Here is a comment that somebody's put saying, "Hey, in Wales they're beating you up, and in Scotland they're beating you up, saying you've got to speak this English now. If you're going to speak any other language, you're going to beat up." And now the thing is, according to the dictionaries they've given us, after they beat people up 100 years ago, most of the beatings happened around 1900, 1920, 1880. Yes. Now we've got dictionaries telling us this is Old Scottish Gaelic or Old Welsh. But they beat everyone up and they destroyed the language, and then they wrote the dictionaries. And then many of these words are supposed to be similar to Hebrew. But Hebrew was a dead language that didn't exist either. Yes. More information about these things is in my book, Last Crusade. So now let's go through this a bit further. Let's see, is Welsh and Gaelic, is it really similar to Hebrew? And can we really find the Welsh and Gaelic languages today? Let's go through this conspiracy. It's even worse.
Because we would have the same
Yes.
problem with the modern dictionaries, right? As you pointed out.
Yes. Okay, now I want you to see this. According to history, 500 years ago, they made the law that English is to be the only language that's going to be used by lawyers in Wales. The British made this law, and Welsh speakers were banned. Do you believe this history?
Well, from what I understand now, I would rather not believe it.
Use your brain from what I've just told you. Don't try to think how Daddy wants everybody to think.
Oh, why not? Isn't that how you're supposed to honor your,
Well,
your
we're
ancestors and your
supposed.
superiors? No, from this point of view, my assumption would be the populace on the country spoke some version of whatever old version of Arabic maybe they spoke, for lack of a better
Okay,
term.
I'm going to show you that this is a total lie and Polishtein in 2 minutes. Now read it yourself, the last page I said. The laws.
The laws in Wales Act 1535 decreed that English was to be the only language used in Welsh courts.
That's enough. A court is somewhere where there's lawyers. So they're saying you should use English. But how can that be possible if in London, what language are they using in London for the law courts, by the way, Raphael?
The meaning of law French is the form of Anglo-French used in England in judicial proceedings, pleadings, and law books from the medieval times to the 17th century, which is at least 1600.
So in 1535, they're using French in London,
But they
they're
use
beating.
English in Wales. That's just very creative. Yes, I see what you're saying, David.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
makes no
trying to.
sense. Yeah.
It seemed like saying in the 15th century they're using what do you call it, French in Germany, but they're telling the Austrians to use German. Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, it seemed like saying they're using Russian in England, but they're telling the Americans to use English. It's a lie. There was no English, and they've invented the history of Wales. Have I just proved it? Is that 100% proof? Read this one again here. Yes. Law French.
Yes, law French continued to be used by English lawyers in written form until, again, 17th century, which would be 1600 at least in official timeline.
So it's impossible that they were using English in the courts as law in 1535. They've just lied and they've been caught. The entire history of England and Wales and the English language is a lie. Yes! Yes! I just proved it. Have I proved it?
Well, from
Is
this
that 100% true?
this example is a very clear example, assuming all the data is correct. Of course, everyone will want to see more examples of this, but this is definitely, yeah, this definitely points towards what you're saying, for sure.
It's proved it. I proved it. There's no doubt about it. Okay, now let's go back here. So now they want you to believe that Welsh and Scottish is related to Hebrew and many other things. Yes? So what do you call it? What they did was, yeah, the thing is, after they beat everyone up, forced everyone to study English in schools in the last 150 years in Wales and Scotland, what have they done now? Because they say we're democratic now. Yes? And what have they formed now? When was the Welsh Language
Yes.
Society formed? To say, to try to save it, because they've totally lost Irish and Scottish. When was it founded?
In 1962.
1962. Do you think they're going to remember the language of 1862?
No. No.
Impossible. Yes. So let's go to the fraud even further. Yes. And then the thing is, you'll see how much of a fraud this is. It's just a total scam. Yes. What do you call it? Yes. By the 19th century, or the 19th century, not many people went to school. So it's more like the year 1900. All education in Wales was in English by the year 1900. And what does it say? Many Welsh people
Abandon their language, preferring to use
preferring to
English
use English.
instead. Hmm.
But what do
It's
Welsh
unlikely.
people themselves say? Yes?
They would say they
Yeah.
were forced.
Yeah. What does force mean? Welsh speakers were beaten up.
Mm.
Yes. So they were forced, but now they're teaching a nice history. That's from the god.gov.uk. It's the official historians who work for the government who are saying, what do you call it, the Welsh people abandoned, they gave it up, saying, hey, we don't want this. We prefer English. Yeah,
Yeah,
we prefer
highly
somebody.
unlikely. Highly unlikely, yes.
Yeah. And by the way, the thing is, and then, what do you call it? Yes. Yeah. So now the other thing is, yes. So if I want to see something now. What are they doing? They're trying to force English onto Wales. So what do they teach us here? Read the date again. They're telling us that, read it again, 1535, that English was to be the only language used in courts, basically in education. Yes.
Hmm.
Yes, for the upper class and everything. And then do you know what they're telling us? So now they're forced to use English, or they're going to be burnt alive. But they're telling us that the Welsh Bible was translated when?
In 1588.
How can that be possible? They're speaking French in London, they're telling us. But they're telling us, oh, but we want you to speak English in Wales.
For
Yes?
60 years, and then someone's translating it into Welsh. That's also very strange. Would
But
not be
how can they
allowed.
translate it?
Could not
Do
be
you want
allowed.
to, do you want to know when the
And they
first proper
shouldn't.
Welsh?
Yep.
Right. So I checked this to see if it's possible. The first proper Welsh dictionary with all the tenses or orthography, the full orthography of standardized Welsh. When was it? When did they start to open the committee to
In
create the Welsh language dictionary?
1928.
1928. How could they have got their Bible done in 1588? Notice
Hmm.
88, simple year. Is this another lie? Is it a bit obvious? Oh, I want you to check this out now. Yes. So now they're forcing everybody. They're beating them up in Wales. Yes. To what do you call it? Speak English. Yes. But now they're trying to prepare Welsh dictionaries and the Welsh language. More like they're inventing the Welsh language. I want you to read this. Yes, so the person who is in charge of the committee, yeah, Daniel Lewis Boyd, what type of a man was he? In 1883,
He attended to Jesus College with a J.
Jesuit college, where?
Oxford. Oh, nice. Hmm.
Oxford. Where is Oxford? Is it in Spain? Is
It
it in China?
should be in England.
It's in England, it's not in Wales.
Hmm.
So what does this man do? The next paragraph. While at Oxford, what does
Maurice
he do?
Jones studied Welsh books and manuscripts in the Bodleian Library and attended lectures.
So
Hmm.
he's studying in Oxford according to the Welsh books that they've given him. There's no evidence any of these books are from
Right.
Wales.
Right.
Yes.
Hmm.
It's manuscripts. They wrote these manuscripts. They wrote these
Right.
Welsh
They put
books,
whatever
and
they
then
wanted there, and then they'd be like, "Oh, you will be the professor for this." Of course, he'll be an
yeah,
insider, and then you just study all of this, and then yeah,
yeah,
makes sense.
and
Yeah.
then him and his committee, they invented this Welsh language and told everybody this is what you call it. Yes, the original Welsh language. You understand? Yes.
hmm
So the thing is, they opened up another Welsh society for these things at Cambridge. Yes. So the thing is, they're telling us they already had Welsh
Oxford
books
and
and Welsh.
I mean, David, Oxford and Cambridge are not suspicious institutions at all in terms of
Yeah,
elite.
but the world has to know these things. So now let's see, how can they have already had hundreds or thousands of Welsh manuscripts? Yes, yeah, because they were making the first dictionary and orthography. What is an orthography? Many people don't know.